Madam, good to go.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Shahid bhai.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the SEDA lecture series. Devil is in the details. This is a lecture series where we look at works of designers, architects, furniture designers, even textile designers who have been doing some exemplary, interesting, and innovative work in areas ranging from designing of product or branding design or even textile design, you name it. So that's the whole idea. And today I'm really honored to have with us Anuj Ambalal, and really was really nice of Anuj to have agreed to join this lecture series, and he's joining us from Ahmedabad, and he has agreed to show his work for the benefit of our students, and not only for the benefit of our students, but also for the larger community at large, because this is a lecture that remains archived in YouTube, that is available as a reference. That is the whole idea. Before I invite Anuj to present his lecture, here's a little introduction to him. So Anuj Ambalal holds surprisingly a master degree in investment and finance from Middlesex University in London. He used to work as an equity researcher before setting up a design studio in Ahmedabad. Now, it will be very interesting to see uh, how an investment banker or somebody from finance and investment looks at design. His studio is called A Cube Incorporated, at which he is one of the principal designers. The studio focuses on furniture, lifestyle products, and interior design. The primary focus of the studio is to look at design as an art form, concentrating on diverse shapes and textures to create individual sculptural entities. It also recognizes the need to develop a design idiom that is more local and focuses on developing designs that can be termed as contemporary vernacular. Now, that would be a huge area of interest for us, because even in our institute, we have been looking at these terms like heritage, history, vernacular, and are in some sense trying to also find a new definition rather than a way of, reflectively looking only at the past. Anuj's studio has received national as well as international recognition for its work and has been identified amongst the most influential design practices of the country. So, with this introduction, I would like to invite Anuj to present his lecture.
Hey, thank you for the generous introduction. Uh, After each introduction, I have to really remind myself whether it is me you're talking about or someone someone else. To tell you the truth, I'll be talking with you today, uh, and in a very informal way. And I would like everyone involved to make it as an interactive session. So with every slide, if any of you have any inputs or any questions or any comments, please, I would welcome you to share them. Uh, shall I start with my presentation?
Yes.
Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'll start with a brief introduction about the studio. Uh, as you now know that the secret is out, I've had no formal training in design. Uh, we started the studio. When I say we, that is with my elder brother Anand, who too has no formal training in design. And the third person was Prabhudas Mistry, a master craftsman. All three of us started the studio in about 2004. Uh, all three of us had no formal training in design and had no experience whatsoever in furniture making. So it all started in fun and with the sole intention of experimenting with different styles that one can associate with furniture making or lifestyle products. And we started this small studio with a small workshop in the backyard. And I'll share with you some pictures of the studio so that you can get an idea. So this is the studio that we have in Ahmedabad. We still operate from here. Uh, Interestingly, back then we decided to use as many recyclable materials as possible. So the studio, we have recycled wood, the bricks are recycled, the flooring is recycled. I found some stuff lying on the pavement, and we used that as our flooring. It's a Kota flooring, uh, matured with age, and has a fabulous patina. Impossible to replicate using the modern equipment, I would say. And even the glass is recycled. We found there was a trade show in the city, and one of the exhibitors, he was looking to dispose huge glasses that he used for his stalls, and we kind of were lucky to find him. And so, actually, the height of all the walls were determined by the glass that we got. So the entire process was kind of inverse. We got the materials first, and then we, try to figure out how to go about things. So the design process, I think, was totally inverse from what you normally do traditionally. The building on the right used to be the old workshop. Now it is an extension of my studio. This is the old workshop, now an extension, and a peek into the studio. It has changed a bit now. So, uh, to start with uh, the title of this talk, but before I progress into it, I would like to discuss what I mean by the struggles. Struggles, when I refer to struggles, it is not in the conventional sense. Uh, I There has been no drama in my life, to tell you the truth. I've never spent uh, a night on the railway platform or in a park bench. This is not what I mean by struggles. And my lack of training in design also has nothing to do with the struggles. So what are these struggles that I want to talk about? Struggles for me, I think I one can call it a journey from point A to point B. It could be a term that could be interplaced in my books for creativity, and it has no negative uh, reflections whatsoever in my book. I think struggles are absolutely necessary for each and every one, whether one is practicing design or in any other field. Everyone, every designer faces these struggles in a day-to-day life. And I think part of uh, being a designer is to enjoy these struggles. When you have an idea, which one can call it at point A, and the end product of an idea, when that idea materializes, physically manifests, if one can call it point B, struggles is the action of reaching from point A to point B. Once an idea gets physically materialized, the euphoria might last for just a couple of days, maybe a week at the most. And then, it gets lost. But what remains is the process from reaching from point A to point B. And this is what I want to discuss with all of you today. Struggles have nothing to do with how long you've been practicing or how well you've been trained or anything. Any designer worth his salt would have to struggle on daily basis. So how does one identify or categorize these struggles that I want to talk about? I've broadly classified them into three categories: structural, conceptual, and organizational. Now, I'm going to talk about the first two aspects, which I think are the most interesting aspects for students as well as for designers. Organizational aspects are very boring, and that you will, when you start your practices, you will learn how boring that aspect is, and I won't discuss them today. It is something that you have to learn by falling. Uh, so in this segment, I have shortlisted a few products whose structure design gave me a lot of problems. And I'll talk about how we kind of devised ways to move around it and how it actually changed the outcome of the design. I'll start with a chair that we call the Flexion chair. This is something that we had designed very early on in the practice. Now, this is a chair that, as you can see, it is made out of a single bent uh, metal bar. This is made out of mild steel. Uh, and the chair is so designed that it has a certain springing action to it. So as one sits, one can feel that springing action as you sit along, and it's kind of a version of a rocking chair, one can say. Now, as you see, it is a very slim bar, and the problem that we faced was that of fixing the fabric onto the edge of this frame. Now, we faced a lot of problem because we were not happy with the way the fabric was, uh, draping onto the surface. It was not taut enough, and the finishes were not right. And this struggle, continued for a lot of time. I think it went on for months. And so once when I was sitting pondering over what one can do and how can one solve an issue, my eyes fell on my shoelace, and that was when I realized that what I had to do. We changed uh, the internal structure with which we would fasten the fabric, and inserted uh, what I call brackets, and then we used this cotton strap as one would crisscross a shoelace, and it became so easy for even customers who bought these chairs to fasten and tighten the seat as it would loosen. So it became, I think, very easy for us and everyone involved, and it also brought in a bit of uh, quirkiness to the piece. And as a natural progression to this shape, we uh, came out with a different version. We called it the bouncer chair. We retained the springing action that was there in the previous chair, but we cushioned it, made the structure more internal, changed the scale a bit. This is much higher. And this is what one can do once you know that your structure that you are working on has kind of worked. Then you can make different kinds of variations in the design. The Amphi chair. Now, this is one crazy idea that I had, and the idea was to make a chair which would not have a front leg. This was a challenge that we threw to ourselves. Now, the supports that you see uh, were added later on, because as we started making this piece, we realized that the idea was truly crazy and it was not structurally possible to do this. But we went on working on this chair for quite some time, and then we had to modify it into a more conventional form, providing kind of brackets than chairs. In the process, we also experimented with the seat. Now, normally, traditionally, one would use a thread for the seat, but on this occasion, we tried out wire ropes, and we wanted to see whether one can use a wire rope as a surface. And very surprisingly, it turned out to be a very comfortable modes of sitting. This is a 2 wire rope that we used. We used a detail, so such that the stitches look, exposed. And I think that this experiment turned out to be a fruitful one for us. J21. This is the initial sketch. We're trying to figure out how to come about a chair that one can use for verandas or in waiting areas, or uh, and in trying to define a piece, I realized that the only way I can do that is to have a handle that kind of stands apart. So how can we use a handle to kind of define a piece? And what are the functions of a handle? So we went into those details, and we realized that we can have a chair where one can use a handle as a support to either rest your elbows or to use it as a support to get up. And in the process, we came up with this piece. This is what we call the chair 21, one of the better known pieces from our design pool. Now we made this chair and it was very well received, but it had a structural issue. Now, in trying to be very smart about this handle, I overlooked the fact that the material has to be respected. You see, when you change the grains of wood where the strength is, that is where the wood starts losing its strength. And in trying to provide a curve to the wood, we lost a lot of strength in the corners, and we started having a lot of issues. The joinery would open up. So eventually, we identified two areas to work on. First, to change the way we were using uh, the wood, the section. And second, when one was trying to, get up from the chair, that was where the maximum pressure was exerted on the tip of the handle. So we made two changes in this chair. First, we changed the angle of the joint. We made it more angular, increased the width towards the joint, and then gently tapered it. And we also increased the height of the seat. So these were the 2 points that we kind of dealt with. So number one, with a more angular box joint, the joint became very sturdy. And secondly, by increasing the height by about 19 mm, the pressure that was exerted on the handle decreased drastically. And there we, kind of solved the issue. And then we made a larger version of it. We have a 3-seater, 2-seater going on with this. And this handle is so sturdy. I tested it out the first time we made it by sitting on the handle, and it, still works. In this segment, I would like to explore certain concepts that we were trying to evolve in design. And, we challenged ourselves with uh, conceptually with these products. Now, in around, I think, 2008 or 2010, uh, we wanted to design lamps where the forms could be dynamic. So a person could have an experience of seeing different forms in the same lamp. Now, how could we go about things? So we broke the problem to the basics. We looked for when it comes to lamp, Noguchi lamps are the reference points. We cannot really think beyond that. And we also started from it primarily because these lanterns, they're collapsible, structurally very strong, and very easy to ship, because they are collapsible. But how do we uh, kind of make it more local, you know rather than having one more version of a Noguchi lamp? We thought, why don't what are the forms that we can think of that would kind of define that the product is designed in India or by an Indian? So after shortlisting various
सिंधो भगवान भक्त तत्परः साधु वणिकने जमाई रात ने जेल खाना माते मुक्ति मळे नदीना किनारे नौका લઈને આવ્યા નૌકામાં ધન ભરે ધન ભરતા ભરતા વિમાન આવી લક્ષ્મી એવી
Hello.
ચંચળ છે
Yeah.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So a matka is something that I thought one can easily identify its origins. And even if a product is, displayed in a corner of New York, for example, if you see a matka, you would understand where it comes from. So we tried to incorporate these two ideas into the product. And the biggest breakthrough was in trying to figure out how to make a form dynamic. So we decided to use different horizontal planes which would define the outer shape. And internally, we used a different shape uh, so that from one angle, when one is standing or either sitting, you know, you see the outer shape. And when one is sitting as seeing the lamp from the eye level, the outer shape would disappear and the inner shape would take over. Now, this is what we came up with. So we used PVC sheets which were lightweight, very sturdy, and used an internal core. The shape of both the surfaces was different. So while standing, as one enters into the room, one would see this outer shape. And the moment one sits, the stand was designed in such a way that when one sits, one would be at eye level with the inner core, and hence the outer shape would disappear and the inner shape would kind of appear. And then we use different materials. This is one made from mica sheets, and we used this idea in many ways. Again, using simple cutting techniques. This is a large lamp. The bigger one is about 4 feet in diameter. Used, we scooped out the center so that you could have a natural gradation of light that emits from the center. And as you see, this was designed for specifically for a site where these lamps were visible from the first floor as well. So from the first floor to the glass, you would see a different lamp altogether. Contemporary vernacular. This is the concept that we've been trying to play around with since the time we started, and we still struggle with it. We still haven't been able to really understand what makes a design truly contemporary vernacular. What I'll share with you is some experiments that I am kind of happy with. The question is, what is the most comfortable sitting? We started with that. What How does one define comfortable sitting? And there was a lot of brainstorming with this basic idea, and we finally arrived at an answer. I thought the human lap is something that one associates with the most comfortable mode of sitting. And then we decided, why not explore this into design? So how does one do that? So we came up with this shape, and we tried to replicate the contour of a lap when one sees it in section. We came up with a set of stools. Now this is an adaptation of the grass reed stools that you get, the mudas as we call it, and we changed the material so that it allowed us to play with the form, and this is how it turned up. Uh, we experimented uh, with the structure and with the form. When we change the material to cane, these are made out of cane, it allowed us to do a lot of things. And then we started playing around with shapes. This is another variant. The other experiment that we did was in exploration of this idea was in sitting posture. I mean, what would an Indian posture be, a comfortable Indian posture? And we thought, well, progression to a lap would be sitting cross-legged. We don't have furniture that allows us to do that. No chairs, no sofas would allow us to do that. So we went ahead and tried to design a chair whereby sitting cross-legged would be the most comfortable posture. So this is one of the most popular designs that we have. Uh, I think we designed this about 12 years back, and it still is one of the popular designs at the studio. The bottom is made out of aluminum, so it is lightweight. And okay, so this is one interior project that I want to share with you. This is the last piece of the presentation, the last segment. This has been one of the most challenging and by far the most difficult interior project that we've done. Yeah. Hello. Yes. So the project started.
There is some sort of a background noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the client had procured a 16th century wooden structure. This structure it was inside a temple in Burhanpur, which is in Madhya Pradesh. Now the temple kind of got dilapidated over the years, and it was brought down, and it eventually came to Ahmedabad at a dealer's place. And so the client had procured it. The brief was to put up this structure using the same materials that were brought, as you'll see. And it was the purpose of the building was to house a collection of pitchwise and miniatures. Now, this was the most difficult project. I say this because unlike the traditional or conventional projects where the role of an interior designer comes after the civil work has been completed or it is nearing completion, this entire structure was based on 4 pillars, and the entire structure was dismantled when it arrived in Ahmedabad. So we had to work out how the original structure would have stood, give the architect the 4 points on which to place the pillars. And that was important because the structure would then jut out of the building, jut out of the ceiling slab. So if we made an error in our calculations, the entire building, after it would have been complete, would have failed. So I'll share with you some pictures. This is how the building was when it barely stood in its original position. The pillars that you see in the corners, the larger ones, is what I was talking about. It is the basis of this entire structure. Now, the centerpiece was this intricate ceiling. Each and every block that you see, the squares that you see inside, the smaller ones, everything came in about 30 gunny sacks. So it was as if had to put up a jigsaw puzzle. It was like that. And it was only possible because we had Prabhudas Mistry, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years back, with us. He was in many ways, I consider him as my guru, because whatever we've learned is from him. And he worked with Gira Sarabhai, and all his life he's worked with some uh, masters, and it was only because of him this could be put together. So this was the process. There were multiple ceilings, and everything had to be put together without knowing what the end result was. Actually, we didn't have too many visual references to uh, work with. So we put up this in a warehouse, trying to work out where and how the structure can be, because based on our dimensions, the dimensions that we gave, the architect had to design the building around it. So this was eventually how the building layout turned out. The four squares are the four pillars that I was referring to, and that is the roof, the dotted line that would jut out of uh, the building. So this is the work in progress. This is what I was talking about. The three bases, the pins that you see are visible. And then we slowly started putting up the structure. The gentleman on the right is Prabhudas Mistry. This was the process. And finally, this is what started looking like. This was in 2010, so we didn't have too many options for lighting. So we designed and fabricated the lights ourselves. Uh, the budget was also an issue, so we had to, really completed ceilings. And this is how it looks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuj. It was a wonderful presentation. I mean,
I'm sorry, I wanted to hurry this thing because I wanted the students to ask questions if they have any.
yes, definitely. I'm sure a lot of them do. It's very interesting to know that you have not had any formal background of design or, any design background for that matter, being into investment and banking and finance. How did you actually get into getting into realizing that this is your passion for furniture design, or this is your passion into getting to know more about materials. Because it's very interesting, because even when we have students and we have courses in our curriculum which do focus on materials, which do focus on structure, but it's there is somewhere where we have to join the dots, and in your case, where you've completely had a completely very, very different and a very formal kind of an education, and to now see your work and understand as to how much of an in-depth knowledge you have about materials, you know uh, that is amazing. So can you just throw some light on that?
When I was working as an equity researcher, I realized that I was not enjoying myself.
Okay.
And that is when I realized that this is not something that I can do for the rest of my life. So I realized that I was always looking forward to the Sundays. I was always looking, when I was working, I was always looking forward to the end of the day. The thought of starting early morning was again a bit of a problem. And I realized all this, that perhaps this is not meant for me. Now, there were a series of coincidences how we started this studio. Actually, we wanted to procure some furniture for our house, and this was in early 2000. And so we visited a few stores, but they sold mostly what was there in the international market, the Chinese stuff and all that. So it was mass produced, and it didn't appeal to me. We realized that it would never go with my house or my own understanding of aesthetics. It did not, I could not relate with something that was going on. And that was the time when I had quit my job as an equity researcher. So my brother had, that point of time, had just started a business where he was, where he had some wood and some carpenters at his disposal. So I visited that facility and I said, why not try to add value to this? Why not try to make some furniture for our own house? Why not do that? And that is how it started. And I realized that I was kind of really enjoying myself. I was looking forward to working out how things would look, how a joinery can be, what is wood, how would what can one do with it. And I would always ask a lot of questions to Prabhudas Bhai, who I think he, with his great knowledge and he saw this interest in me, and he said, let us try and do something. And that is how we started. And every time we were experimenting, every time we were trying to push uh, you know for different materials, the way different materials can be used in different ways. What I shared with you are some successful experiments. There would be about 30 more uh, unsuccessful attempts for every successful attempt that you see. It's
Correct.
just that you don't see those things. But the failures, I think, taught me the most. I understood why a material cannot work only because it didn't work. The failures, I think, taught us a lot more than a successful attempt.
Yeah, very rightly said. So the last project that you showed, which was the Kamal Chalk, is the project that you were talking about, which really gave you sleepless nights.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was very, the client was my father. So it was one of the one of the reasons why we had
Now I
sleepless
can understand. Yes.
he demands a certain kind of outcome, and the restrictions would be so immense because the pieces that go in there uh, have to be taken care of. The lighting had to be taken care of, and the handling of a 16th century wooden structure itself had so many challenges. So, but it was, I mean, once this thing was through, I think that was when we started enjoying, not the process.
Wonderful.
Can I just come in, Shalini?
Sure, sure.
So, firstly, thanks, Anuj. Thanks for a very crisp and a very honest presentation. I really appreciate the way you have explained your design decisions, your concerns as a designer, what was bothering you, or what is it that you're trying to achieve. And I kind of found it very fascinating. I have two questions. The more like first one is more like a comment. Second one is a question. And the first one is, when I look at the way you look at design of a furniture piece, be it a muda or a chair, mainly that's what you have been thinking about. I mean, there's a very interesting sense of ordinariness, which I find very fascinating, which is to not look for the flamboyant, unnecessary. What you're really trying to do is to look at an established type and see how far you can stretch it. Pose a challenge that what can you do with an armrest, for example, or how can you put a fabric to a cloth. And I kind of find it very fascinating as itself a design position or a design trajectory of an artist or a designer. And somehow I feel that itself can begin to form a body of work. The everyday, the ordinary, the sofa that you might almost miss. Yeah, which is actually very difficult to achieve, come to think of it. Maybe you want to throw some light there. Then I'll have another thing.
There are a couple of rules, if I can say so, that we made for ourselves. Number one, we wanted our products to blend with the environment and never stand out. So they have to go well with the architecture. My pieces, I make it a point to have them as comfortable as possible. And that is structures, ergonomics. That is where we start. And how the thing looks, I think that is a concern that comes much later on. I'm not worried about that. I think we can now handle aesthetics because we only have to make sure that it doesn't stand out and it blends within the environment. A person cannot be overwhelmed by the sight of furniture, because that is the last thing that one wants to see when one enters into the house at the end of the day. It has to feel comfortable. It has to, blend with your own identity in many ways, I think. And the other thing that I make it a point is to never draw a line that you cannot justify. And when crafting a furniture, you cannot have a line that you cannot justify. And I'm not talking about intellectual justifications that one can go on and on. One has to be honest whether this section is required structurally or not. And if so, then how can you minimize it? And that is, I think the whole challenge for us.
Yeah. No, I sense that in your work. And as I maintain that itself can be emphasized in the future. I'm also looking for, I like to see the trajectories and where it is headed. So that's rather fascinating and interesting. I'm just trying to place you as a designer. So that's why this kind of a comment. Whereas my other question is a bit different. This is regarding the last project, which is very intriguing to me. And I'm also trying to wrap my head around as to how does it fit into your repertoire of work. Because if I look at your furniture work, there is this kind of, even though you have not used any of the terms that are academic or that a trained designer might use, but you don't have to use those terms. By the virtue of those work, I can already see that it is a work that comes from a very deep modernist understanding of furniture. When you say not a line extra, or when you say the material itself, the properties of the material itself dictates the form, or the comfort of the human body decides. So that's a idea of, or an expression of form that comes from, quote unquote, the modernist concern for material, for frugality. I mean, a lot of the modern architects are also talking about frugality, about environment, about the real nature of material. Whereas when I look at your 16th century columns and the way they kind of they appear almost like a movie set. Like a column and a beam system existed in a certain context 400 years back because they were trying to solve then a certain problem the way you are trying to solve a problem in your chair. But when you transpose that form, because now the form has been devoid of its true purpose, it has become for us at one level a fetish object and at another level a kind of a romance of the past. It is a facade, because the problems of structure, has already been sorted out by the RCC frame that we see.
Correct.
So how does this work fit into, or is it still work in progress but also a thinking in progress, or I'm not able to place it presently?
See, if I had to completely do this thing on my own, maybe I would have done it in a different way. Maybe I would have used the structure, made use of the structure itself, and rather than making it as a set, so to say, which is standing inside a concrete structure. But as I see it, it also kind of gives an idea with regards to what the scale of these buildings were, and the objects that that are displayed inside also give a context to uh, uh, the structure itself. I say structure, but it is not a structure. I would say a wooden canopy, I would say. So that is only connection that I can make out today. Otherwise, there is the fundamentally the two things are, it is as if you're displaying something inside a museum where you have old structures displayed. It is exactly like that. And I think our role was mainly to facilitate uh, putting up the structure rather than anything else.
Correct. So it was a different, I know. And that partly explains. Yeah. Thank you.
There would be few students and colleagues of ours who probably have joined through the YouTube channel. If there are any questions, you can message us, either me or Pragya, and we can take it forward. So anybody in the Zoom meeting right now? Advaita? Pragya?
No, Shalini, I don't have a question.
I'll just take a minute for in case if there are questions coming from the no. So far, we don't have any questions coming in. Maybe there are a few students who have joined in the meeting as well. Maybe the students can unmute themselves and ask a question if they have.
Let me just, continue the conversation. I think maybe others might come up with we see increasingly, especially in furniture design these days, a shift that has happened. 2, 3 levels it's happening. One is this whole business of, let's say, 3D printing or a kind of a mechanization that is making impossible things possible. You know, you can create shapes, you can mold things the way we had never imagined before. Even the machineries are making a different kind of form now. Yeah. The word that is increasingly being used is mass customization. So you can actually customize each and every beam to do something else. And that's possible because of the way, let's say, the way to begin with, the way a piece of furniture or a building is drawn right from the beginning in a software, the way a parametric software is able to look at every part of the furniture as a special thing. And then, of course, it cannot be made by hand, because I think what the things that we have been looking for in your work are very handcrafted, or at least that's where you want to go. And then these, with the mechanization, with these laser, whatever CNCs, you get these forms, you know. How do you respond to this change, the shift? It's happening all around us. That's one. And since you come from investment banking, I mean, how do you look at the corporatization of furniture design itself? You know, these are two, and perhaps they're two interrelated questions.
I think it is quite an exciting prospect. What truly mind-boggling. What actually is possible, you know, in this day and age. And but if to tell you the truth, I like that human element, the element of touch, the idea of a person working on a, a product. And I think that makes a lot of difference, because I see it every day. I see a carpenter working on a piece, and I know what exactly goes into it. And I like that. You know, I was having this conversation with an architect, and he told me that, you know, while IIM Ahmedabad building, while it was being made, we Khan wanted to shift the bricklayers from one section to the other. And I said, why would he want that? He said he wanted a subtle change in the hand. He wanted that to come in the building, and that was, I think, perhaps one of the reasons why like Louis Kahn's building. I think it has a lot of life in that. And somewhere down the line, I don't think it is possible to deny the human touch. At least for me at this point of time, for me it is essential to, you know, it is something that one sees in art. You know, the technology also has seeped into art, and the way one can do things has changed. The way artists look at artworks and how they create artworks have changed. But one cannot really uh, deny the genius of a Monet or Francis Bacon, simply because the way that the brush touched the canvas, and it is not something that can be replicated. Every single stroke or brush that comes out from the hand of an artist, it affects the way the end product looks. And I think it is also true for crafts and furniture making and everything that falls into this preview. I don't know if this answers.
I mean, no, I think it does. I mean, I was just trying to see your position there, because it is leading to a whole variety of different ways in which production is happening, form is getting created. But this is also this also demands that we take a stand or take a position. It is not necessarily for or against. But in the absence of taking a position, we tend to be driven into the forces that hit us. So today, it might be this technology, but after 2 years, there's something else. And then sometimes the danger for a designer is that one can lose one's bearing, or what I would call as one's kind of a center or a moral compass as to what is it that you want to do. And that's very well said, because it's also something very useful for young designers. And you could absolutely embrace technology, but then you do it with a purpose, with a with an ideology. So technology has to come not because it's a fad or because it is there. It
I
has to
think
come with
technology has to be used as a tool
yeah,
to express what you really believe in, or what really gives you joy. You know, moment you start looking at technology obsessively to make things using a technology because it is there,
yeah,
because it can be done in a certain way, let us do this.
correct,
That I
correct.
think is a bit of a problem as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you for that. Over to you, Shalini.
Yes, so anyone from here? No, Pratyush, we're good to go. Thank you, Anuj. I think it was a brilliant presentation once again. And there is a lot to learn from your presentation. And I'm so very happy that we have it now archived in our YouTube channel for us to kind of, keep looking at it and learn a lot. But it would be wonderful if we can even meet up and we could be exposed to being, or probably be honored to see more of your work and the manner in which you work. What have been your ideas behind each piece of furniture that you have at your studio? In fact, your studio is also one such wonderful piece of architecture that we would love to see, since you said it is everything that you have used in your studio is recyclable. It
I
would
would
be
like to
wonderful.
invite your entire batch to my studio along with the faculty
Thank you so much.
together, or whenever one is visiting. Please come to my studio. I would love to show you around. And also, I mean, I'm at your disposal whenever you feel. I can drive to Baroda to talk to students. This is something that
Thank you.
I
That
really
is so
enjoy.
wonderful. That is so wonderful of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for giving us this wonderful
No, it
opportunity to
was a
interact
pleasure.
with you today evening. I know you're a very busy person. You just
No,
probably
I know.
got back from your Delhi exhibition, it seems.
Yeah.
So, yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pratyush.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Alex. Thank you.